Hello, I'm Kelly Lewis,
And I'm Tiffany Jones.
and we are your revenue insiders here today with Alex Raymond.
Hey, great to be here.
Welcome. Excited to have you. Okay. Do you want to do a quick introduction for the audience so they know why you're here and what your expertise is?
Yeah, sure. So, my name is Alex Raymond. I'm the founder of AMplify. AMplify is a system and a professional home, call it that, for account managers. So, account managers and customer success managers, people who are in post sales roles. And we do a lot of discussion around things like retention and churn and revenue and upsells and profits and stuff like that. And I just wrote a new book called The Growth Department that I'm excited to talk with you both about.
Yeah, I'm super excited for this. I love the focus on the post sales motion. I actually, a few years ago, transformed our account managers to growth AEs because I'm so bought into this concept. So I'm fascinated to learn more from you and kind of your philosophy around all of this.
And how'd that go?
There was some fighting about it at first. It wasn't like a smooth transition. And, we're always iterating. I don't know that you're ever making like the exact right decision in some of these changes every time. But overall, like I think we've had a huge shift to focus on expansion dollars over the last few years, which has been, I think, a positive result of that mindset change.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's kind of jump right in, kind of on that topic. So there's so many directions we could go here, but I want to go with the one you just said, Tiffany, which is I've worked with teams in post sales quite frequently. And I remember this has got to be like 2017, was working with a team and called them sellers, called our account managers sellers. And you thought I had given them the worst feedback in the entire world. Like you would think that I was like on a playground and called them a dirty name. They were so upset with me. And it was really funny because I didn't think that was offensive at all. I had always been a seller and they carried a number. And so I assumed that wouldn't be so offensive, but it was. And helped me understand the mindset of why I unfortunately offended this group of individuals so historically.
So the team was offended because you called them sellers and they didn't like that label.
Yep.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
were very mad at me.
yeah. Well. I mean, what do account managers excel at? They excel at solving problems for their customers. That's what they love to do the most, right? Is understand where's the customer trying to go? How can I help them get there? Which parts of my service or product or whatever are going to help my clients to reach the goal or reach the pinnacle of what they're looking for. So that's what they love to do. Turns out that revenue is part of their job, but it's, for a lot of people it's the back part. What comes first is value. So they say, hey, let's do value first. I'm a problem solver. I love to roll up my sleeves and get into it with the clients to help them solve stuff. I'm a strategist. Like, that's how a lot of account managers like to think about themselves, as opposed to transactional selling. Yes, I do deliver revenue and I do retention and upsells and cross sells and all that kind of stuff. And I'm responsible actually for 70+% of the revenue in any given year. But I don't like to be, kind of think about that as my primary role. So I can see why you might have put some noses out of joint with that comment there, Kelly.
Oof.
I mean, it's so interesting to hear you describe all those skills because in the world of enablement, I find that we are often training new logo sellers to do all of those skills. How do you be a better advisor? How do you be a better strategist? How do you be a better partner? But there is, Kelly, to your point, so much more resistance in training the account management side of the house in how do you follow MedPick? How do you close a deal? What is the mutual close plan? Like those types of steps, I feel like there's a blocker for people adopting them. But that's why I love the framing of the growth department, because it is such a big part of a company's growth is working with their existing customers. I just came out of the planning phase, Alex. I spent a lot of hours. Kelly and I've vented to her about the number of hours I've spent doing planning over the last several months. But we spent so much time on our new logo planning. What is our pipeline going to look like? What are our conversion rates? Do we have the right ratios for SDRs to AEs? Are the territories optimized? And embarrassingly, like no time doing the same thing with expansion or customers. We're going to do it. It's on our list of things to still tackle. I'm sure I'm not the only one that takes that approach. Why does everyone still obsess over new logo versus looking at this growth department as one of their main sources from a revenue perspective?
Well, we're chasing growth in all the wrong places to a certain extent. And so, what's the goal of the company? The goal of the company is to increase its value, to increase the enterprise value of the company. That's by and large what we're trying to do. And there's lots of ways that we do that. We have this we have this view in our minds that's, kind of outdated, which is essentially the way to get that valuation is revenue growth at all costs versus are we building a profitable, sustainable business that's durable? And the durability part comes directly from the customer base. It comes from customers who are getting value, they're sticking with us, they're buying more stuff, they're expanding and growing. And yet we still love this chase and we love the new logo and we love the idea that I can somehow, simplify the complex here and figure out how to win a new customer. And of course there's value to that. Nothing that we're talking about today means don't go get new customers. That's not the conversation. Conversation is keep getting new customers and get better at how you are managing your existing customers. Because when you look at the economics, it's really very stark. The economics is very stark. 73%, according to Forrester, 73% of revenue comes from existing customers every year. 100% of profits comes from existing customers every year. Because why? Because you pay to acquire new customers. It costs you money to acquire new customers. Existing customers are very, in that regard, they're much more efficient for you. And so why do we spend more time? And you're not alone, Tiffany, like spending so much time on territory planning and conversion rates and how many SDRs do we need and AEs and, this thing and that thing, like to map this all out. And then the account management team is just like, oh, okay, well, off you go. You get the same budget as last year. Good luck. Call us if you need us. Yeah. And so, you got to wonder, what does this say about the priorities of the company? Do we understand where durable growth comes from? Like literally, like, do we know? And there's a very good chance that your CFO does, right? But like, is that then informing the rest of the business and how we're going? One of the things I love to talk about with people is net revenue retention. And everyone's talking about NRR these days, especially in the software world. So there's a number at which if you get this number of NRR, your business is doubling in 4 years without you adding a single new customer. What is that number, you two?
Oh gosh, I majored in finance and I feel like I should be able to mathematically back my way into this, but
I haven't had enough coffee. Can we blame that?
Okay. So
Okay, give us the
backtrack.
answer.
Let me backtrack then. Do you know your NRR numbers today?
I do.
Okay.
Yes.
And they're over 100%?
Yes, that is always I
Okay.
would hope so. Yeah.
I would
Okay.
hope so.
Well, they're not
But there
not
were
always
years
over
they weren't.
100%.
That's true.
For a
They're
lot of
not.
companies.
No,
Yeah.
that's fair.
Okay.
Yes.
So here's 2 things I want to share with you. First of all, if you get to 119 in NRR, your business is doubling in 4 years.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So think of what it would take to double your business in 4 years just with new business, just with new logos versus can you slightly increase maybe your NRR today is like 110, right? Or 105. Okay, great. You get an extra point on there that gets you closer to doubling. It has a huge compounding effect within the business, right? The existing revenue compounds to the effect that new revenue does not compound, right? Because new revenue, you got to go out there and earn every single year. The existing stuff compounds. So when you're saying, how do we make, as in sales ops, how do we make the biggest contribution possible, right? It's by fine tuning that part of the engine. But the other thing I just want to share is if we do want to grow the value of the company, every single point in NRR growth going up leads to a 12 to 18 point increase in valuation over 5 years. Okay, then. So is what we are doing in revenue planning and territory planning and sales driving the NRR that is going to help us grow the enterprise value of the company? That's the question to ask. So that is, are we getting good fit customers? Are we all aligned behind the same thing? Those sorts of questions is what you're going to want to be looking at.
So fascinating, and you're right, and we should absolutely be thinking about it. My head immediately goes to when we start having these conversations internally, we often start talking about structure of the sales team. Tiffany and I have talked about this before in that for a very long time, you had very separate roles. And then during COVID, right after COVID, where the markets were struggling and we were suddenly couldn't take for granted our current customers, because everyone in SaaS particularly was seeing additional churn that they weren't seeing before. And so everyone, I think, kind of moved away and started combining roles to save headcount. And now I see a little bit of a shift back to more specific roles, specific teams with specific remits. When you are advising a company or you are thinking through what's the best structure in today's world, what would you recommend?
So there's a lot there, and we've seen a lot of stops and starts over the years around how we do this. So the traditional role is, there's a reason that we call these people hunters versus farmers, right? So the concept is, in sales, you're out there and you're hunting, you're bringing in the big game, whatever analogy you want. You're out there doing that to acquire a new customer. Once you have a customer, you have a different set of behavior. And so customer success evolved essentially as a way of saying, how do we smooth out the revenue line over time? How do we make sure that our customers are quote unquote successful, so that they stick around with us, so that they pay us all the time, and then that helps to create a nice growing compounding revenue line. Account management is typically like much older than customer success. It's been around for a long, long time, and it's kind of comes from the client services realm, or how do we just make sure the client gets what they need and they stick around with us. Combining, so there's a whole bunch of combinations that then happen. So some teams combine account management and customer success, which I generally think is a perfectly fine idea. Totally fine, no problem at all. It doesn't seem to have negative consequence very much. Other people then say, well, let's combine account managers with account executives, and let's create probably the worst idea I've heard in a long time. Let's create the full spectrum account executive, the 360-degree AE, who's going to go from cradle to grave with the customer, who's going to be around from when we first start pitching them all the way to the very end. It sounds attractive because you think, well, this way there's continuity with the customer, and there's one person, and they build trust and so on. And then all the knowledge about the client is in this one person's head, and therefore they can be a good ambassador and so on. In reality, the skill sets, mindsets, behaviors are so different between these two groups that trying to put them all into one profile just doesn't work. Because truly, an account executive is going to have a different set of intrinsic motivations than an account manager, right? They just like different things. They behave in different ways. They think differently. And trying to tell them you're going to both go through the chase, and then once you successfully kill whatever you've been chasing, then you're going to have to manage the whole thing for the entirety in 5 years and 10 years. I mean, customer contracts can last a very long time. And if you're picking someone out to say, hey, this person has the talent to go out there and be a great hunter, do you really want them playing a different role if they're a great hunter? No, you don't. You want them to be specialized. Similarly, if you got a great farmer, you want them to be specialized in that and not give them, this other role. So I hate that idea. I can't stand that idea when people talk about it. I think we're missing the point. I hope you aren't doing this. I hope no one who's listening to this conversation is doing this. Bad idea. That being said, what is an idea that I'm liking and that I'm seeing these days? I'm liking a hierarchy of revenue that all rolls up to one place. What do I mean? Right now, you have chief revenue officers. Are they truly chief revenue officers? Or are they the people in charge of the 27% of revenue that didn't come from our customer base, right? So that's a reasonable question, right? And for a lot of people, it turns out the answer is B. The CRO is the CRO in name only, meaning they're not in charge of all of the revenue. And so I like to see, and I have seen a lot of companies start to do this, where the CRO now is the owner of the entire thing. So account management and customer success, what I call the growth department, rolls up to the CRO. Why? Because it's a revenue organization. All revenue needs to flow through this person, and that will solve a lot of alignment problems and remove a lot of friction from how we do things. So that's one organizational design that I do like and am seeing more of.
I'm also a fan of that, of like the chief revenue officer owning from start to finish, including CSMs where you have those roles. One of the things though, when you talk through kind of the distinctions and why the 360 AE doesn't make sense, one of the reasons is comp looks very different in each of those roles. Not just like the comp plan structure, but even the split of variable to base that a lot of the people in those roles expect to have. I'm curious, like in this concept of growth department, if you have any like strategy around how you think about compensating teams, both that you're hitting their intrinsic motivation that you mentioned, but also so you're encouraging the teams to work together most appropriately. Because even when you have just account management and CSM as two different, if one's responsible for the retention side and one for the growth side, say, you want them working together ultimately or having like a piece in each other's business so that you're thinking about NRR holistically.
Well, for sure, and the answer is in your question, I think. So the answer is, do we have a single North Star metric that we all agree
Mm,
is how we should be evaluated? And the one that is most common these days, which I think is a good one, is net revenue retention, NRR. Why? Because NRR can be seen. Well, first, it's considered a proxy for leadership overall. It's not a proxy for sales or account management or customer success. It's a proxy for, do we have our shit together as a company?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's true.
And no, for real, like it's a mark of, is, do these people know what they're doing? Right? Is NRR high enough that I can tell these people know what they're doing? So NRR tells me, are we attracting the right customers? First of all, so that's a great metric for sales. Are we bringing in good fit customers who are going to stick around with us for a long term, who we know we can reliably solve their problem? So great. And do we compensate the sales team? Yes, we do. And they have their 60-40 split or 50-50 split or whatever it is. Then post sale, guess what? Same number. NRR is now telling me, are the customers sticking around and are they growing with us? So we're actually touching lots of things with that one single metric. And then at that point, you can say, well, the post sales team prefers 70-30 or 80-20 or, whatever the split might be. But as long as we all agree that NRR is the metric, and then you can break down NRR either at the company level or at the portfolio level or at the individual practitioner level, right? You can do any of these and say, here's how we're going to score you. That winds up being really motivating, but it's also a through line that's connecting all these different teams. So that's why I like NRR as the one right now. Some people do gross revenue retention. That's fine, but it doesn't include the growth and expansion.
yeah.
Okay. So, one topic that you talk about in the book is active retention, which again, we just talked about the fact that for a while, I think a lot of companies took retention for granted and you can't anymore. You just can't. So, what does active retention mean to you? And how do you advise teams to treat retention differently?
Well, Tiffany just said earlier, we're trying to get people to do medic and medpick and stuff like that in the in our reviews for account managers. So I'm gonna come back to that because there's something there. So the main issue here is the fallacy of recurring revenue. So many years ago, during SaaS 1.0, everyone decided that recurring revenue was the thing. Choppy revenue was bad, and nice smooth revenue lines is what we're going after. And we decided as an industry that we're going to start talking about recurring revenue, because all you needed to do is like open the window and stick your hand out, and revenue is going to fall from the sky onto your hand, right? Because it's recurring, it's automatic. The customer signed a contract, right? Therefore, it recurs. Or I'm just going to walk around in my yard and pluck money from the trees. And as a customer success manager or account manager, all I have to do is put my feet up on the desk, lean back, hang out, maybe check my email once or twice a day, and the revenue is going to recur. It's just automatically going to show up in my bank account, just like I was sitting around clipping coupons in years past. So great, wonderful. That's where we're starting with. And so we have to fight against this fallacy: annual recurring revenue, monthly recurring revenue, whatever it is, because what's happening is we're undervaluing the work that the post sales team is actually doing. Because when I think of something as recurring, it's like, well, all you did was sit there and stick your hand out the window and it fell into your lap, right? It fell into your hand. No, that's not what's going on here, right? And anyone who's been in customer success, account management, they know the battles, the work, the negotiations, the internal stuff that happens. It's a lot of work. Getting a renewal is a lot of work. Getting an upsell is a lot of work. Therefore, we need to be a lot more active about how we think about this. So the term active retention is something that I don't know if I coined it in the book, but like I talk about it in the book. Active retention is, instead of assuming that this is all automatic and therefore I can be on autopilot, what do I need to do in my mindset? How do I need to shift my thinking to make sure that we're going out there and operating with the same level of discipline, professionalism, and proactiveness as the sales team is with their new deals. So hence the link back to what Tiffany was saying before.
Mm.
You go into the sales meeting and it's this great big spreadsheet with all these, red, yellow, greens and mid-pick columns and Salesforce this and dashboards and so on. And everyone knows like exactly what's going on, right? I mean,
Yeah.
hopefully they all know what's going on.
Hopefully.
Yeah,
Hopefully.
there's a decent amount of rigor and there's discipline to it and people sort of have a general idea. Then you walk down the hall into the post-sale meeting and you just have less rigor. There's less, stuff. It's like, well, when's that renewal? Oh, I forgot. And oh yeah, oh gosh, it's in a couple weeks. I should probably give them a call. And like, but I think we're in pretty good shape because we had a QBR last month. And like, it's all these just like guesses and assumptions and, like not clear commitments in either way, not clear communication. And so the idea of active retention is basically, can we, can we burn all that stuff and do this properly? Can we build it from the ground up and do it a better way? And the better way is with the rigor and the discipline and the systematization, professionalizing the whole thing essentially.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I brought up MedPick as my example earlier because I find that at least in my day job, we have more rigor than what you're describing in the post sales. Like everyone knows when the renewal date is. Like we have a lot, like there's bookings policies around things, and people are on top of it. Their own commissions and management rely on it. But what does happen is when the customer says, "I'm out," or "I'm unhappy," or like "I don't want this product anymore," the growth department side of the house will take that at face value and like, okay, they're done, they're out, they're not signing. And there is none of that like follow-up or rigor that happens in a sales cycle when like someone says like, oh, we don't have budget for your tool after all. It didn't make it past this like security review step. Like there's a lot more chasing. And like, well, what do you mean? What happened? Can we like back up 5 steps? Who else is involved? And so I think it's both the rigor of like the review itself and understanding like where each deal is and treating it with professionalism. And then there's this like, for me, when I think of growth, this next step of like this discovery phase or med pick or whatever challenge or whatever methodology you use, like really digging in to understand like what's going on to save the customers. And I still struggle though with where does and it's probably different by org structure, but where does an account manager fit into that versus like a customer success manager? And that's where I see a lot of difference in the behavior. Maybe that's a really nuanced question, but I'd love to understand like when you start to put that professionalism in, how have you seen it be most successful in kind of that balance between customer success really roles and more of the like active account management roles?
In that question comes up a decent amount, and I'll say that in my viewing of it today in 2026, that there's more blend of the two than you'd imagine. So for the most part, these are not 100% interchangeable, but they are roughly describing the same role. I don't believe that putting a lot of nuance in there is winds up being helpful. Some people say, well, customer success does the training and the onboarding and implementation, and then account management does the contract and the this thing, like I don't think we're doing ourselves a lot of favors there. Generally use account management as the overall umbrella to talk about
Okay.
all this stuff.
Okay.
Some companies call it customer success. To me, I almost equate them. And if anything, what's happening in the world today, right now, means that the traditional customer success stuff is the one that's most at risk of disruption and change. So, onboarding, customer happiness, training, implementation, check ins, those are by far the least strategic of the things. They are by far the ones that are most potentially automated with AI or other tools. And they're farther from, so that's on the external side. On the internal side, they're farther from revenue. They feel farther from revenue for the leaders. And that has big consequences when we're making resource decisions.
Yeah. Yeah.
So customer success has always been fighting against this perception of being glorified support. And the more we get thought of as glorified support, the worse it looks in 2026.
argument on the other side that I always hear, though, is that you want someone in your organization that's on your customer side, that doesn't feel like they're chasing them for a contract or like a budget, and like are true like advocate for them. And I think that's true like more in enterprise sales, probably, where like enterprises expect some of that hand holding. And I feel like that's what I've always grappled with in like some of these org design decisions, is how do you create the space for customers to have that connection?
You do hear that. And it's important when you hear that not to lose sight of the bigger picture. So here's what I mean. What is the role of the post sales organization? The role of the post sales organization is to help our company succeed in the marketplace, to help us win in the market. Like literally, that's our job. How do we do that? We do that by delivering profits back to the company in the form of a contribution margin. Right? So we get a book of business, we're told to grow it and send the rest back to HQ so that HQ can do all the things that it needs to do to run a business. Those are very important steps that a lot of people forget along the way. And then how do we deliver profitable revenue back to the company? We do that by keeping the customers that we have, growing the ones with the most potential, and making sure there's no surprises along the way. So keep, grow, and no surprises. That's essentially the structure here. When people say we need to have an advocate for the customer inside of our company, that's great, as long as it's going through the lens of helping our
Mm,
company win.
I like that.
Sometimes we forget that part, right? And therefore friction, when you get some friction or you get some differences in opinion and alignment, when we forget that the whole reason we're doing this is help our company to succeed. Now, most of the time people make that connection, but it's worth keeping in the back of your mind is like, are we actually seeing it that way?
It's interesting in the way you put that because it helps me better understand, I think, maybe what the future of customer success looks like. And as you're explaining that, I think the level of customer success that you will receive will change also very differently based on the size of an account you are as we look into the future, because you
As it
can
should.
automate so much of what smaller accounts need in terms of customer success. I'd love to go back to one thing we were talking about was rigor, though, before. This is something I've been dying to ask you because I feel like every time I work with a new client, it's one of the first things they ask me is, we don't do great account planning. We know this is a problem. We need to get better at account planning. And then when I ask them what account planning looks like today, it is all across the board. I don't think there is a great standard in go to market
Mm,
today that you can
yeah.
say, this is your account planning framework and this is what everyone should use. Do you have any opinions, thoughts on what real account planning should look like? What should be incorporated there? Because we could all use some advice, I think.
Oh, man, this is a
We're
great,
lost.
it's a great topic. Account planning is a great topic, and it's a very important and meaningful tool used right. It is also this like bludgeon that is used to make the team do more admin work than they should be doing. So when you
Like
think
you'll
about account
never see
planning,
more eye rolls when
yeah,
you
correct.
say
You're never going
we
to
need to
see
do an
more eye
account
rolls get
planning
more
exercise.
resistance than being told go do an account plan.
Oh,
And, why is that? Because for the most part, these are purely administrative exercises with way too much stuff in them, far too many fields. Like, and I'm like writing War and Peace to talk about a $50,000 account, which is terrible use of everybody's time. So, the first is to simply ask ourselves, which customers or in what way would we benefit from doing account plans for a certain segment of customers? Okay. Do all of them need account plans? No. Just like, by the way, no heresy here, not all of your customers need a quarterly business review. All right. The segmentation is very important exercise, and stick to it and figure out what it means for everybody. So does everyone need an account plan? No. Does an account plan need to be your boss's 35-year-old template that they got when they used to work at IBM? No, it doesn't. Are there 4 or 5
they
questions?
are. You're so
Yeah.
right. Oh my gosh. Some
Yeah,
of
they
these
are.
I
They
look at,
totally,
I'm like,
totally.
But
oh,
you
this
implement
is,
them in Quip. That's the difference. Now they're
yeah,
modernized.
they're
You
in
put them
Quip.
in
Oh,
Quip.
yes, we're going to do them on Google Drive so that
Or
all of a
Chat
sudden we're solving
GPT.
all these
You feed
problems
it
here.
in a
Yeah,
Chat
quite.
GPT. You have a GPT
Correct,
that'll do it
correct.
for you.
Yeah. Are there, however, 4 or 5 questions that would be very meaningful to answer about every one of our accounts? Yes. So could we instead create a thing where we use all the data that we already have in CRM or other systems, right? and then answer a handful of questions where I get to do the deep thinking. So what kind of questions might I want to put into my account plan? Let me give you some ideas, okay? Besides all the basics of like who's the customer, what they buy from us, and so on, all that I assume exists somewhere else. I would love to ask, what is a bigger problem we could solve for this customer? That's a cool question. You can ask a serious account manager that question and have them think about it and bring it back to you. What assumptions are we making about this account that haven't been tested lately? Huh. That's an interesting question. I would love to see the answers for that. What are the outcomes that they are driving for that we are helping them with?
Yes.
Cool. Let's write that down. And then along that line, let's then say, have we actually defined it, tested it with the customer, delivered it, measured it, and showed it back to them? All very meaningful questions. So if we did that, then we could start to get a much better understanding of what's going on with that account versus all the little stuff, the lines and the Excel spreadsheets and the Quip documents and the CRM and all that sort of stuff. So what if instead an account plan was simply answer these 4 or 5 questions about the account? We'll assume that we have all the stuff, the data hygiene is there. Let's have a conversation about that stuff. People will be more excited to do those if we put it in that kind of framework, right? So that's where I think we're going. That's what I'd like to see the future look like.
That outcomes question, I think, is they're all great questions, but the outcomes one I find exposes where you need the most coaching in your account management team. What I've seen in versions of this is when outcomes, whether it's in the QBR they're presenting to the customer or some other format, they don't actually know what the customer's like goals and outcomes are. They've created ones that self-serve us as an internal company, and it becomes very obvious when you ask them to do these exercises, and it's probably going back to the active retention, your biggest signal that you're not actually working closely enough with the customer, and there's probably risk there that you don't see if your account management team can't accurately list what those bigger goals are for them as a company. I love that one because I think it serves both purposes.
So
So
here's
that goes back. Oh,
what's at the
sorry.
root of this? What's at the bottom of this? What's at the bottom of this is the misallocation of resources between sales and post sales. So
Yeah.
I already told you that it's about 70-30 or 25-75 in terms of where the revenue comes from, and it's 100 to 0 in terms of the profits. But when you look at the investment, it's like 4 to 1 on the other side. Sales gets roughly it's actually 4 to 7 times the headcount, the training, the systems, the tooling, the trips to Cancun, offsites in Las Vegas, the support staff, the travel budgets, etc. Right? It's roughly 4 to 1. So we have this like very lopsided balance. And how else does this then percolate through the company? I now have a portfolio of 20 accounts, 30 accounts, in some cases 100, 150 accounts, which are like completely crazy. How am I supposed to know heads or tails or a single thing about 150 customers? I can't. Zero chance. Even 5 is a lot. Even 10 is a lot. Right? So as soon as you start breaking over 5 to 10, you say, how could I possibly expect anyone to do an account plan? Right? Their phone's ringing, their emails blowing up, their Slack, their this, that, etc. And I'm trying to have them do all this stuff. So unless we get a handle on proper segmentation and portfolio alignment around this, we're simply pouring more stuff on everyone's head. Like we're just simply giving them more work to do. And lo and behold, everybody's stressed out, burned out at breaking point, and we wonder why we aren't making bigger progress with our customers. So that's all happening too. That's again a resourcing decision. More people on the team or better portfolio allocation, we can then respond to the customers appropriately.
One thing that comes to mind when you're talking about all of this, and it goes back, Tiffany, what you said about training, Alex, what you're saying about resource allocation is during the sales process, the initial sale, you are writing this all down. You know what the value proposition is. You've sold them an ROI story. There is a business case, but for some reason, I think there's two reasons. One is we don't train our account managers like we do our new business. So when we're throwing that over the fence to the account management team, they don't know how to translate it and read it and understand the value of it. But also, I don't think it always gets thrown over the fence.
Turnover, yeah.
It just
Yeah.
lives in the CRM under that original opportunity. And there is no guidance for an account manager or CSM to then use that really important data in the QBR a year later. And so curious what you're seeing there. And Alex is like a best practice to that handover because it feels like it's always missed.
That handoff is a huge source of frustration and friction for people, right? Like, I mean, it drives people nuts. And by the way, it makes you look terrible to your customer too. Your customers hate it as well if it's not executed properly. And so yes, it starts with documenting everything we need to document during the sales cycle. It starts with bringing your account manager or CSM in before the deal closes so that we have a smooth handoff so that customer is not surprised by a new face, right?
Mm-hmm.
By the way, you can also use your account management process as a selling tool to tell the customer how good you are at all this stuff and to prove to them that they're going to be in good hands and help reduce friction points in the sale. It starts with that, good documentation, all that sort of stuff, proper amount of meetings internally on who's the customer and so on. Don't just say, here's your person and they're going to give you the white glove treatment. Like, this is not the point, right? This is not the point of this. We're not here to solve every single problem the customer has. We are here to help the customer reach their goals. So handoff discussion around goals. And one of the things that happens here is, during the sales process, we're talking about big picture outcomes. You're going to make this much money, or you're going to save time or energy, or whatever. So it's got these big ROI things, and then the implementation meeting happens. Like, they're literally the first thing the customer sees, and we start going straight down to the bottom. We go down to project plans and colors and fonts and buttons and this setting, all this sort of stuff, and then we wonder, why is the customer stuck in the weeds? Why can't we pull them up to have a big picture conversation about their goals anymore? And it's like, well, we literally have trained them to do that. And so one of the questions to ask is, in your onboarding and implementation kickoff process, do you have a session on economic impact? Do you have a session on goals? Do you have a session where you design the scorecard that the customer is going to use to present internally back to their boss on how things are going? And those are artifacts you can create, right? You can create these and build these and so on and use them. But that's a really important through line there, is like, what are we teaching the customer to do or not as it relates to our interaction? Because universally, 100% of account managers and CSMs are saying, boy, I wish I could have a more strategic conversation with my customers. They're all saying that, rightly so. And when you look at what we are training them to do, you can see they're responding to exactly what we're telling them.
Yeah, we've had such a great conversation today, Alex. I've really enjoyed this. I am really looking forward to reading your new book. So that is on my list of things to tackle in some of my downtime in the next few weeks. But we always love to end our sessions with asking our guests to leave us with a question, something that Kelly and I can think about, or really anyone listening, to help form their own point of view on account management and the growth department. So I'd love to have you leave us with a question.
I already mentioned that NRR is something that people are getting more, there's more focus going on it these days, because it's a proxy for how the business is doing. And it also is a proxy that can drive company valuation in the long term. So there's a lot there. I also shared that we have a misallocation of how we're spending time and money on sales versus new business, which will ultimately have an impact on net revenue retention. So the question that I would like to leave you with is, what would it do to the value of your stock options if you were allocating the right amount of money and resources to post sale to really drive your net revenue retention to a higher level, to really get that moving in a different direction? What would that mean to you and your financial future if your company were to do that?
What
Would
does
your
that?
stock options go up in value, or
Yeah,
would they go down in
yeah,
value?
yeah.
What would it
I
mean?
mean, clearly
I
they're
mean,
growing up, but like
yeah,
how much and like that
yeah.
difference. I mean, you did the math for us earlier, and I think that's such a powerful way to think through it. Okay, Alex, I have a feeling everyone's going to want to reach out to you. They're going to want to read your book. They're going to want to learn more. So how do they do that?
Yeah, super wonderful. I would love everyone to read The Growth Department. It's up on Amazon. I would also love everyone to check out what we're doing at AMplify. AMplify is at amplifyam.com. And this is a place where we're building a community, but more than that, we're building a governance structure for post sale. We're building a whole different way to think about post sale, and we're doing super cool stuff. We have amazing companies and individuals involved. Come check it out. And I would love to engage with anyone there. And I'm also very easy to find on LinkedIn.
Great. Thank you so much for the time today, Alex. This was a fantastic conversation. I think we keep circling back to this topic with different guests, but the world of post sales, there's just so much to really discuss and unlock here. So I'm again excited to read the book.
Awesome. Thank you both.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. And if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure you are subscribing, following us, and giving us a quick rating. It helps other listeners find episodes like this. Thanks.